Hey there, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. On this episode, I'm going to talk to you about showing up and why it's important. Because the thing is, what I have found over the years with working with a lot of people is showing up gets actually undervalued. I think it's undervalued and underrated, in my opinion. The reason I say that is because nothing happens unless you show up. So let's get into this for a moment. I've had numerous clients showing up on calls with me, and they've been talking through things that they would love to do, things that they would love to spend their time doing, or opportunities that have presented themselves in their lives. And they've gotten a whole lot of anxieties and worries that keep showing up. Basically, they get stuck in their head and they start overthinking what's going on and what this opportunity might be and how they have to show up and who they need to be in these interactions and how they need to present themselves. And they get so caught up in their head about how this is supposed to go that when they do actually go to these engagements or events or social events or whatever it might be, they kind of fumble their way through it. And it's because they're thinking so much about what needs to happen when they get there and how it needs to go that it's almost like they're trying to control the outcome. Now, you may get this from me, and I talk about this endlessly, about the importance of wanting to let go of control. Because the tighter the grip of control, the more out of control you feel. So in these situations, when you're trying to control the outcome because of the way you're showing up and the way you're presenting yourself and how you're interacting with everybody and being very methodical about it all, the more you get in your head about that stuff and the more you're trying to control that outcome, the more out of control you will feel. And that's when emotional behavior starts to show up. So I want to give you some solutions and some thoughts and insights around the value of focusing not on how you show up, but just on showing up. So for me personally, over the course of my career, I certainly at various moments got in my head about who I thought I needed to be. I needed to act like this international speaker and this expert and this guru and this guy that just knows everything, and show up like that with this charisma and like really overdo it. And it was actually giving me a lot of anxiety and I couldn't work out why. The more I thought about trying to be this person, the more anxiety I got. And I thought, well, they're just fears that I need to crush and overcome. And then I thought, no, I know better. I got the insight and I started looking into it and I realized, well, the fear and the anxiety is feedback. It's trying to help me. And if you need some more insight and more exploration on that, make sure you go and check out my episode on anxiety. Now, I realized the anxiety was giving me feedback. What was happening was I was getting in my head thinking I needed to be somebody I was not wherever I showed up. And whenever I tried to show up as this charismatic guy who was oozing expertise and authority and all these different behaviors, the more I would fumble my way through these engagements and these interactions. And the more I found that I kind of made a fool of myself. And then I would reflect on these interactions and I'd be ruminating over it, how I showed up. It's like, that's not me. Who the hell was that? Like, why was I showing up that way? That doesn't make any sense. And then I realized I'm trying to be someone I'm not. And I was trying to be this image of like this compounded and integrated version of 2 or 3 different mentors all in one. And I was like, I worked it out really quickly. And I was like, there's already one of each of those people. We don't need a third person that's like all of them. Like the world, however big or small the world is going to be for me, needs only one Giorgio. And the world only needs one of you. It doesn't need another Giorgio or another you. It doesn't need another expert or whoever the popular leader is of your field or the area of the world that you're into or you're interested in. There's already one of them. We don't need another one of those. So when I realized that about these experts, I was like, okay, this is just helping me come back to being me. But I had some anxieties about that, like most people, about showing up. Are we enough as we are? And as I continue to do the mindset work and changing my beliefs and increasing my sense of self-worth and actually valuing who I am as I am, a lot of that anxiety started to calm down. And then I realized a lot of the interactions that I have shown up at as myself, opportunities that came of that changed my life. But here's the thing. The only reason I was able to show up as authentic in these moments and show up as me and be me in all of these different interactions, be me at these different talks, be myself at different workshops and different live events and so on, it's because I chose to show up in the first place. Think about how many times you've had the opportunity to show up at different places and you're almost backed out. And in some instances, you probably did back out. Now, that happens because we talk ourselves out of doing it because we think it's not valuable. Now, I know you know the hardest part of anything is actually showing up. But we actually convince ourselves that the hardest part is being there. It's not. The hardest part is showing up because once you're there, you're already there. All you have to do is just be you in those settings. And I know all of this sounds like it's great in theory, Giorgio. Yeah, okay, all you have to do is be yourself. I don't really know who I am. I don't know that I actually value myself or truly appreciate myself. And I get that. There are things that are getting in your way of that. And I've addressed some of that in other episodes, and I will continue to address this in future episodes. It's what I'm here for. But the focus here is on showing up, because nothing will happen without you showing up. You want that job? You got to show up to the interview, right? You got to apply, which is a form of showing up. And then you've got to show up to whatever interviews that are being offered to you. And whatever secondary and tertiary interviews are being offered as follow-ups to that. You want to get paid for your work? You've got to show up in the marketplace. Or if it's a job, you've got to show up at your job and deliver what you're there to deliver. Delivery doesn't happen without you showing up on whatever it is. If you're looking for a relationship, it requires you showing up in the places that you may actually meet the person that you would love to meet and be in a relationship with. That doesn't necessarily mean bars or any of the popular dating apps that are out or dating websites. It just means showing up at the different interactions and the different opportunities where, who knows, you might actually meet the person you're aligned with, especially if you're showing up in the places that the ideal partner would actually spend their time. So showing up is a big deal, and we completely undervalue it as far as I'm concerned. Showing up if you're a small business and you're trying to build an audience or build a market, showing up on social media, showing up in your searches, putting your stuff out there, that's half of the battle, and that's half of the work. From then on, what happens is people become aware of what it is you have to offer, and they're more inclined to engage with you. I know for the growth of my business has come from the result of me doing everything I can, myself and my team, to show up in all the places that we want to show up in, including this podcast. Half of the effort in putting these podcast episodes together is showing up for them. With a full schedule and a full calendar, that can be difficult. But as long as I show up, I can deliver a podcast episode to you for you to listen to or watch. If I don't show up, there's no podcast. It's really as simple as that. The same is true for my group calls, especially when I first started doing it years ago. I had a lot of apprehension, like, oh, what if people don't like what I have to say? Or I started getting in my head, or what if they don't see it as valuable? Or what if I overwhelm them with too much info? What's going to happen? Are they going to leave? And then I reminded myself, all I have to do is show up. Step 1, show up. Step 1 is always show up. Step 2 is not show up, right? You don't deliver and then show up. You show up and then you deliver. So I just reminded myself, just show up. All you have to do is show up. And when you do, that's when the really cool things that you did not expect to happen, the serendipitous moments, the synchronicities of the people you happen to meet at the perfect time, having the meeting the right people at the right time and the right opportunities. It's really profound, the different people that you can meet when you give yourself permission to show up. So I want you to start to develop an understanding of just how profound that is for you. And I want to give you this little exercise that will show you the value of showing up and presenting yourself in each of these situations. And I don't mean presenting yourself as in talking on stage. I mean being present at times when you could have chosen to be absent. Here's what you can do. I've done this in my own life. I've done this with many of my clients. So I know this will help you. I want you to go back through your life. And I want you to look at all the cool opportunities or all the interesting opportunities you've had, the ones that you consider valuable. And if you are honestly convinced that there has been nothing that's been truly valuable in your life or profound, let's take another look, because while you may not like your job is paying you an income. So you're earning more than you would if you were unemployed. So if you actually take a look through your life, have a look at all of the opportunities that have led you somewhere in your life. Ask yourself, was it showing up that led you to grasp that opportunity and take it by the hand? Because the reality is, you will find as you go through each and all these different moments through your life, all of it happened because you chose to show up. Everything from the big moments, the meaningful moments, all the way through to the tiny little moments, the trivial stuff. For example, the only reason I'm married today is because I showed up at my wedding, right? I know it's kind of comedic and it's a bit of a joke, but let's get real. The only reason I have a wife right now is because I chose to show up on our wedding day. And the same is true for her. The only reason she has a husband is because she chose to show up at the same place at the same time that we both agreed to get married. But the only reason the ceremony happened and the only reason we got married was because we both chose to show up. And I think a wedding is actually a perfect example, because most people tend to get in their head about what's going to happen on the day and all the different little moments that could go wrong and trying to control the outcome. But let's get real. The hardest part of any wedding is showing up. What happens after that is already scheduled, planned, and just unfolds anyway, regardless of how it's supposed to go. You end up, if this is you getting married, you end up walking away getting married. Typically, unless, I mean, I've got clients that have gone another way, but the only reason you will get married is because you showed up on the day to get married. It won't happen without you showing up. It's true for all your job opportunities. It's true for, let's say you are married or you're going to get married. The only reason you're having a wedding in the first place is because you chose to show up on that first date and every date subsequent to that and every interaction. It was showing up that led you to where you are. And then allowing for life to happen around that with its serendipitous moments, these little synchronicities that we could never really plan. We'd like to think we could, but we can't. That's when all those cool little moments happen. I've got another story of when my wife and I went to New York. It was a challenging trip. The whole trip got flipped on its head. But when we eventually arrived in Manhattan and we were staying there, I think it was for just under 2 weeks, while we were both really stressed out and tired because of all of the challenges that we were navigating, what we allowed for was the serendipity of New York that New York allows for, and most cities do. But New York is really special for this, is the things that you stumble across as you walk the streets of Manhattan. And I've got clients in Manhattan who have lived there who have said the same thing. It's what's really beautiful about New York. Anyway, we would go for walks and we might be walking back to the apartment and we'd come across a restaurant, like a little doorway that was a restaurant, and we'd walk downstairs and it's this beautiful restaurant. And we'd ask them, hey, do you have a seating for two at dinner time? I know this is unlikely. Next thing we know, we're sitting down having a beautiful dinner in this restaurant that we wouldn't have discovered. And that only happened because we chose to show up in these moments. We chose to leave the apartment and go for a walk, show up in the walk, show up in the city. The same thing happened. We were walking past Radio City Music Hall, and there was a huge line around the block. And we just serendipitously happened to be walking past, asked what everyone was up in line for. They told us what the show was. We walked in and they gave us 2 seats. We skipped the entire queue of hundreds of people and got straight in. And it was only because we were showing up rather than running away and going back into the apartment and just laying in bed. Showing up really does lead us to some really memorable and precious moments in our lives. The same is true when people give birth to a child. Most people want to kind of run away from that experience because it's so challenging, but the beauty of those moments come from showing up in those moments, especially for the male partners or husbands or fathers showing up in those moments. They get to reap the rewards of being there because they can be really precious moments. They typically are, and they're memorable for a lifetime. When we show up, we really do extract a whole other experience of life that being absent can rob us in reality. Now, that doesn't mean be everywhere and do everything. That's unrealistic and that's not aligned with what I teach. These are things that you want to be authentic about. But I know that whenever I had chosen to be at the various places, at the various events that I really didn't want to go to, and I was willing to talk myself out of going to, the opportunities that have led me to where I am today have been profound just because of that. Just because I was given an opportunity and I said, okay, well, let's give it a go. At the very least, I will show up. And that became a little affirmation for myself. Maybe one that you can adopt. At the very least, I will show up. Because that's when the cool stuff happens. You don't know what's on the other side of that door. And showing up is like opening the door. That's the very least that you can do. Everything else that happens on the other side of that door only happens because you opened it. So start opening doors for yourself and watch how really cool things can unfold in your life. Please don't undermine or undervalue or underappreciate how important showing up is. I hope I've made my point. I know I've been drilling on it for a little while and I've dedicated a whole episode to it, but really, it's the small things and the simple things in life that actually have the most value and are usually overlooked by most people. And by no means is it easy. Showing up's really hard sometimes, but nothing valuable came from being easy. So, on that note, I hope this was valuable. I hope you do reflect on the various opportunities that you've created in your life, the things that have worked out well for you, and have managed to connect the dots to that happening as a result of you choosing to show up. I hope this was valuable. I hope you do some reflecting, and I hope you show up. Thank you for showing up to listen and watch this episode. That means a lot to me. I show up because you show up, and I will continue to as long as you do. So make sure you subscribe to wherever you're listening to or watching this episode, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye.